So it's my great pleasure to introduce Lachlan Murphy from the Department of Defence. Lachlan holds extensive public sector experience and is currently a cyber policy officer within the department. He administered the recent DISP reforms and continues to promote a security culture within both industry and the government. If you could please welcome Lachlan to the stage.
Thanks, man. Cheers. Thank you very much. That was a pretty good introduction, actually. Now, just to gauge the room, has anyone sort of worked with Defence before? Yeah, that's good. Is anyone hoping to work with Defence in the future? No? Well. So the Defence Industry Security Program is basically a membership program for any industry entity that wants to be working on classified information or assets with Defence, whether you want to be working on weapons, explosive ordnance, or provide security services. So it has been a program for quite a while, but just recently, come April 9th, we have reformed the program with the aim to make it more accessible for smaller businesses and to sort of reduce the catch-22 situation where big prime companies were constantly winning contracts. So I'll go touch a bit on the security environment. So as I'm sure you're all aware, the security environment is ever evolving, and because of this, we need to make sure that our arrangements are contemporary. So this is definitely evident with a seemingly increasing number of instances of espionage and cyber attacks. So the Director General of Security, Duncan Lewis, recently went on record and stated that the threat of foreign espionage and intelligence is at unprecedented levels. This was further backed up by a statement saying that there are more foreign intelligence officers now than there were in the Cold War. So in 2016, there was the Defence White Paper, which was a $195 billion investment into defence capability. So that kind of money obviously doesn't go unnoticed by malicious states or individuals. And as such, it makes industry an attractive target to the threats of both corporate espionage and foreign espionage and interference. So the foreign ownership, control and influence is an increasing concern when we partner with industry. And we need to be able to understand and manage these risks in accordance with Australia's and Defence's national interests. As I mentioned, industry is facing greater cyber threats. These include hacking, as I'm sure you're all aware. Recent events in the media are definitely reflective of this. We had the recent instance of a Western Australian shipbuilder have their systems hacked. And we also had the Parliament House hacking, as I'm sure you're all aware of. So what's becoming more and more obvious as well is that there is an insider threat within business that is very real and it has to be managed appropriately. In addition to all these challenges, supply chains are becoming more complex, and to safeguard these, we must encourage a greater focus on the security culture of Australian industry as we move into the future. So as I mentioned, DISP was historically a program and we've recently reformed it. So the old DISP didn't really meet the needs of industry or defence. So we identified this through a review that involved consultation with both internal and external stakeholders. So previously, membership was a contract-based, requiring industry to have a current contract with Defence in order to become a DISP member. So this was a serious barrier to industry participation, often referred to as the catch-22 situation. For example, I can't get a contract with Defence because I don't have a DISP membership, and I can't get a DISP membership because I don't have a contract with Defence. So that only prevented SMEs from getting into the industry, but was also very inefficient for the larger companies who had to manage multiple memberships. And as you can sort of guess, it inherently reduced the level of accountability for these companies. You can understand that it also made it very difficult for Defence to have appropriate risk oversight of their supply chain. It was also difficult to meet international obligations, as we didn't have a recognised standard of membership that we could say with confidence that our industry partners are currently meeting. So identifying these issues resulted in these significant reforms of the old DISP to the DISP that we have today. We developed the new policy through extensive internal and external consultation with numerous working groups, and we also had a pilot prior to the launch. The pilot process involved both extant and new DISP members, including primes and SMEs, to identify any teething issues that were associated with the new policies and procedures. And also an evaluation was undertaken throughout this in order to refine it further. So now we talk about the new DISP. So our new DISP directly benefits industry by reducing barriers for participation, making DISP more accessible for the SMEs and industry without a history with Defence, By doing this, we increase access to government tendering opportunities. We improve industry's access to security services, supporting businesses to become what we call defence ready. We have a whole range of tools available online, and we also have a portal that you get access to once you become a member. This includes things like threat briefs and physical security information, ICT information. We also increase the flexibility around the security implementation in your organisations through the introduction of what we call a tiered membership structure. You will also be able to have the ability to sponsor your own staff security clearances if you meet the eligibility requirements. So you'll be able to sponsor your staff up to an MV2, granted you can meet the certain requirements. So DIS reforms will also lead to better security outcomes by strengthening planning in contracting and capability development, by embedding specific security clauses and risk assessment requirements throughout our Smart Buyer framework, which is our contracting suite. We have stronger foreign ownership control and influence checks. And we have more focus on the supply chain by working with our projects to bring important elements into the DISP. So we recognise that there was a pretty significant gap in the unprotected, unclassified space of work. So we've established minimum cybersecurity controls at that unclassified level. We also help industry gain a greater focus on insider threat mitigation and develop a strong security culture within your organisation. We will also have a new assurance program, which is an intelligence-led risk-based assurance program that's going to be handled by our newly developed Defence Industry Security Office, which I'll touch on a little bit later. So this is the tiered membership structure that I was talking about. This is a very simplified version. On our website, we've got a whole bunch of the detailed policies and plans that we have supporting this program. So as you can see, the membership categories are aligned with security classifications. We've got the entry level, which is the green at unclassified, all the way up to level 3, which is top secret information. So this provides industry with a greater flexibility when choosing their DIS membership, allowing them to tailor their membership in order to suit your organisational needs. The implementation of this entry level provides easier access for industry not yet working on classified information. And if you do wish to engage in classified work, then we can work with you in order to get you up to scratch to those higher levels before you enter into that contract. So as I mentioned earlier, the DISO has been established to achieve 3 main outcomes. So they're going to be conducting the security assurance and audit activities across the DIS program. They're going to be providing security support and advice to industry by having a DISO representative located in every major city. And they will also be working with other departments and agencies in order to coordinate industry security engagement and services. So there is a DISP assurance framework, and it consists of 5 core elements. So it's going to be an intelligence-led assurance program. We're going to be working out what areas of the highest risk, and we're going to be targeting those areas. There's going to be a 5-year forward audit program, so we're going to be planning everything in advance. We're going to be checking compliance with DIS eligibility requirements, which will be supported by organisations submitting an annual security report, which basically is a report saying that I continue to meet my obligations under the DIS program. And we'll also have a specialised shipbuilding assurance program. As I'm sure you all know, shipbuilding is becoming a very large thing in our organisation. So what are the costs? Is always a big one. So there are no direct costs. There are a few indirect costs associated with DIS membership. As I mentioned, you'll be able to sponsor your own staff security clearances. So there is a bit of a cost to that. I believe last time I checked, the baseline security clearance was around $700. And then when you get up to the top secret clearances, they can become a bit more. You'll need time to attend and travel for security officer training. And there may be fees associated with implementing governance, personnel, physical and information and cybersecurity arrangements for your organisation if need be. So as good as it would be to be able to give you sort of a rough idea of how much it will cost, it's only a relatively new program. So we're still trying to sort of get a bit of an indication. And as I'm sure you all can understand, it does vary a lot depending on the size of the organisation, what your organisation does, and how sort of secure your organisation already is. So I'll just go into the 4 categories that you saw in the tiered membership structure earlier. So we've got the governance. So the governance will be the sort of main one for most of industry. The main requirements are that you must have a chief security officer and you must have a security officer. So the chief security officer, we expect to be able to direct resources to be able to influence policy change. So probably the most standard arrangement that we've had is somebody that reports directly to the board of directors. but the security officer will be responsible for more of the day-to-day management of your facility and your staff and all that kind of stuff. So for smaller industry, we can understand that you won't have that many people, that you can have both. So one person can play both of those roles if need be. Obviously, for those very large industries, you're going to have lots of security officers, but we still would probably expect you to have one chief security officer. And those chief security officer and security officer are expected to maintain a baseline clearance for entry level and above. They can have higher clearances if they request that. So we require you to submit a foreign ownership control and influence check, which basically highlights your main sources of revenue. Oh, I've just lost the back of this. And it will also tell us where foreign nationals are located in your company and all that kind of stuff. It's not something that's going to prevent you from getting DIS membership, but it's something as defence we need to be aware of before we enter into contracts and all that kind of stuff. So you'll be required to maintain security policies and plans. We've got templates for this on our website. Website has become a bit of a one-stop shop for everything, so anything that you need to support your application, you'll be able to find on our website as well. And as I mentioned, you'll have to be submitting an annual security report to us every year. You'll also be required to implement annual security awareness training, including insider threat training. We've got a PowerPoint on our website that sort of highlights how Defence would do their annual security awareness training, but we would encourage everyone to get in there and, I suppose, customise it to your organisation. And then you've, as I mentioned, the ongoing reporting obligations. So that's your annual security report, and then as a clearance holder, you're required contact reporting, incident reporting, all that kind of stuff. You can find more information on that on AGSVA's website as well. So the personnel security requirements from entry level and above, you're expected to implement the AS 4811 Australian employment standards. Now this doesn't have to be retrospective, it's only moving forward, and it's not a very onerous task. It pretty much only involves doing police checks, screening the personnel you employ, and implementing an appeals process. So it's important to implement these, not only for DIS membership, but in order to have a better understanding of your workplace so you can implement security mitigation measures specific to your organisation. So I believe that there is a review being undertaken as well, which might include a few extra things, but I'm not sure when that's going to sort of kick into gear. So physical security is relatively easy at the entry level. Say if you have contractors who you contract out to Defence and they're working on Defence sites, your organisation itself can have this entry level physical security. And all you really have to do is just tell us where your locations are. When you get into those higher levels and start to deal with classified information, you will have to go through a process where Defence comes out to your facility and they'll certify and accredit it to a certain level, saying that it's okay for you to store this kind of information. Now, I will actually touch on, there has been a lot of sort of people who go to external contractors and consultants and stuff in order to get their physical security up to scratch and then come to Defence. So part of what we do is we'll send somebody out to your organisation and assess it, and we'll give you recommendations on what you should do. So if you're thinking of getting into that work and getting those sort of levels of membership, I would advise you to come and contact us first to work out exactly what you need to do to sort of reduce that double handling a bit. So the information and cyber security, we identified that there was 5 requirements that would sort of lead to good security outcomes. We worked with internal, external experts in order to identify all of these. So all DIS members must meet at least one of these 5 requirements. And then when you get into levels 1 and above, then you'll need to have your network certified and accredited by Defence as well. And if you get up to level 3, then it could go through ASD and all that kind of stuff. So the 5 that we've identified is the ISO, the international standard. That was an obvious one to include in there. The NIST, the US standard. So we recognise that a lot of the businesses that we work with also work with the Department of Defence in the US. And the NIST is actually a standard that's required under the ITAR requirements as well. So we've got the DEF stand, which is the UK requirement, and that's the same thing with the US. We recognise that a lot of companies also work for the UK, so we want to make it as easy as possible. And then we identified the top 4 of the ASD Essential 8. We originally went for the ASD Essential 8, but through the pilot process, we recognised that it was becoming quite difficult for those smaller industries in order to meet the whole 8. So while we do recommend that you do meet the 8, the top 4 are the ones we identified as being mandatory. So those of you who are already DIS members, you'll have 24 months to apply. You'll be able to talk to your contract managers about all this kind of stuff. Unless your contract ends sooner, then I would advise you to apply as soon as possible. It's not an onerous task. You pretty much just have to fill out 2 application forms, which is the foreign ownership, control and influence check I mentioned earlier, and the normal application form. So if you have multiple memberships across your organisation, when we receive your application, we will consolidate all those memberships into one company-wide membership. How to apply? As I mentioned, we've got our website. It's got everything you'll need. I encourage you all to go on there and have a bit of a look about the in-depth security plans that we have and all that kind of stuff. You just need to submit your application form and your foreign ownership and control and influence form, and then we'll do the rest, basically. If you have any questions at all, contact us and we'll be able to sort of step you through the program. So I'll just briefly touch on this. So while the DISP is a risk mitigation exercise by defence, the ultimate risk onus still lies in the contract manager. So if you do enter into a contract, there may be extra security requirements. I can't expect there to be too much unless it is a very classified contract, but they may put in sort of specific requirements to meet the organisation needs. So that's all I've really got. It was relatively short and sweet, but if you have any questions moving forward, there's our email address that you can email, and there's the link to our website as well. So I'll open it up for a few questions if anyone's got any. Yes?
Traditionally, if you want your network accredited for private sector, you need a sponsor.
Yeah.
Is that no longer required?
So you will, so for example, if you're applying to be a DISP member, that will all be handled through the DISP membership. So you could consider the DISP membership as a sponsor. No. So you can say, I want level 2 ICT security, and then we'll organise that for you.
And the other thing is in your categories, you have a clearance level you can attain your staff with the level you're at. Whereas quite often what you want is staff who are cleared to work at a level on Commonwealth premises on a project on your own.
Yeah.
So that link could be a bit of a problem if you're going to say, oh, I want a level 0 for our office, but we want to be able to sponsor people and pay for them to have MBT clearances so they can work on secret projects.
So this is where the tiered membership structure comes into play. So you're able to have, as you mentioned, say level 3 in order to sponsor your staff to MV2. Because they're going out to organisations, you'll still only need entry level along here.
Oh, so they're not linked?
No, so you can mix them up.
Sorry, I thought
Yeah. So you can mix them up, and that's why the sort of flexibility comes about. Yeah, makes it a lot easier. Yeah, 100%. Any more questions? No? Well, thank you very much for your time. I've got a booth directly outside. We've got a lot of pamphlets and stuff. If anyone wants to pick any up or grill me with any difficult questions, I'm there. Thank you for your time. Cheers. Thanks, mate.